You want to reach 2000 ELO in chess. It's your dream. You want to feel proud, respected, and finally say yes, I am a strong chess player. That's why you click this video. But it's not easy. You watch videos, practice openings, solve puzzles, but your rating goes up and down. It feels like you are not improving, and that makes you angry, tired, and confused. I know how that feels. That's why in this video, I will share 5 easy tips that really work. If you follow them, you can reach 2000 ELO easily. I will explain everything in a simple way so you can understand it and start improving today. Before moving towards tip number 1, there is a bonus tip for you in the last of the video. So make sure you watch the full video. So tip number 1 is a prophylaxis move. This is a type of thinking system in which whenever your opponent plays a move into your half of the board or pointing towards your half of the board, you just ask yourself one question: what was the plan behind that move? And once you got that plan, you just have to neutralize it or stop that plan from being executed. Basically, it will gain you 3 main advantages. The first one is it will frustrate your opponent. The second is it will keep your positional security. And the third one is it will prevent your blunders. Like in this position, black played queen g6. Now, this move is pointing towards your half of the board like this. So you ask yourself, what is the plan behind it? You find that he's attacking this g2 pawn and threatening to take it. So what do? You just play g3, stopping his plan of taking on g2. Now he play bishop f5. Now you see he's again playing a move pointing towards your half of the board. And once you ask what is the plan, you will get it. He's attacking this weak c2 pawn, which is only once defended with our queen. So now we stop his plan with d3. We are frustrating him. We are stopping his plans from being executed. We are maintaining our positional stability, positional security. So now, after some few moves like this, here white plays bishop f4. Now can you find a prophylactic move for black in this position? Now you can see this bishop is pointing towards his half of the board. Now he will ask himself, what is the plan behind it? He will find that he's attacking the c7 pawn. So the best move is to just castle. He's improving his piece position, he's getting his king to the safety and also defending his pawn. So most of the best moves is sometimes a prophylactic move. This is the example number 2. Here white played queen d3. Now he's pointing towards your half of the board. So you ask yourself, what is the plan behind that move? And you can see he is trying to make a battery and create some threats. And we will play h6 to defend this checkmate. Jokes apart, here you can see he is threatening to checkmate. So what do? Yes, we just play g6 to stop that threat. This is example number 3. Here black played knight c6. Here he is looking into your half of the board like this. So you ask yourself, what was the plan behind that move? You have just imagined that he's just defending his e5 pawn, what's in it? But no, if you calculate in your half of the board, he's trying to fork your both the rook. So you just play a3 and stop his plan from being executed, and you will also stop blundering your rook pair. Moving towards our tip number 2, which is worst piece rule. As per Mikhail Tal, every piece in his possession was worst because he sacrificed all of them, and especially queen. Just kidding guys. Here worst piece rule means you have to find in your position which piece is worst. Which of my pieces are doing nothing? It is attacking nothing and controlling nothing squares of our board. So you have to find that piece and improve its position. Basically it has 4 main advantages. The first one is it will increase your chances of tactics. The second one is you can attack your opponents easily because your active pieces will control more squares on the board. The third one is your opponent cannot attack you because his pieces are restricted because of yours. And the fourth one is it weakens your opponent's position. Take this position as an example and apply the rule of worst piece. Here you just have to check all the pieces of white and try to find out what is their importance and what are they doing. is their position best? And once you got a piece which is not doing anything, controlling no squares, you just have to improve the position of that piece. That's all you need to know. You can pause the video and try to find the best move in this position. You start to check all of your white pieces. Are their position best? And are they controlling more squares on your opponent's half of the board? Here you can see these knights are controlling very much opponent's half of the board like this. So we don't have to worry about these two knights. So now let's move our attention towards this rook. This rook is holding this rook towards this pawn, because if this rook moves somewhere else, then this pawn drops. So this rook also has an important work to do. Now moving towards the king. This king is controlling this important d3 square, which stops your opponent from coming to d3 and start collecting these pawns like this. So this king is also doing a great job of controlling these squares. So the now last piece is this rook. You can see this rook is doing nothing. Its vision is blocked. Is nothing controlling in your opponent's half of the board. And yes, we have found our piece, which is this e1 rook. You have to just improve his position. Where will you move? Improving position means not trading it. If you go rook d1, this will trade your good potential rook with a bad rook which just has a few squares from moving to just d5 and back to d8. So it would be a bad decision to trade this rook. So what will be your plan to improve your piece position? Yes, you come up with a plan of rook f1. Now you uplift your rook to f3 and h3. By the way, this game was played by Bobby Fischer in real life. So after you can see, we have uplifted our rook position. We have improved our rook position. Now this will weaken your opponent's position. And now you can see it will increase your attacking chances. It will increase your chances of tactics also. You can see in the upcoming part. So now you can see we are attacking this pawn. So opponent has to defend. Now we can go knight f6 check. We are giving a check. We are forcing our opponent to move. And once king moves on e7, now you can see it increased our chances of tactics. We have a nice little plan of tactics. Knight takes a5. If pawn takes, we have rook b7 check. Rook has to block, we take, and you can see that's a checkmate. So you have seen this increases our tactics chances, and also you can give this check, and after the king moves you can take this pawn, and yes, you have created a passed pawn. And basically by just improving your rook's position, you have gained an winning position. This brings us to our tip number 3, which is restricting opponent's pieces. Here it has all the same advantages that we have looked in the tip number 2, and here there is an extra advantage, which is it pressurizes your opponent, and as history's victim, whenever your opponent is in pressure, it's obvious to make a blunder. Take a look at this example. Here it was Garry Kasparov versus Anatoly Karpov. The game was taken from the 1985 World Chess Championships, and it is the 16th round. Here Garry Kasparov was from black pieces and Anatoly Karpov with white. What would you think is the best move from this position according to the rule of restriction of opponent's pieces? So here white played rook d1, and now you can pause the video and try to solve this and try to find the best move in this position. If you analyze it, you can see here white created a battery of rook and queen just to promote this pawn to a new queen like this. But we know the rule of restriction of opponent's pieces. So what do? Yes, we play the brilliant knight d3 move. It is not a sacrifice, but still it's a brilliant move. What it does, it blocks the vision of queen and the rook from defending this d5 pawn. We cannot take it, but still this pawn cannot be pushed to make a new queen because it has no support of queen and rook. Now you can see this rook is blocked. He cannot go on e1 because we will just take it. Now the next threat is we will push this b4 pawn and fork these two knights. So one knight has to move. Karpov moved it to b1, and we are just asking this bishop a question, where will you move now? And now you can see
we have played b4 move. Again, Gary Kasparov is applying the rule of restricting opponent's pieces. This knight was looking into our board, so what he did, he just asked him, why are you looking, just go back. And in the game, Anatoly Karpov moved it to a4. He's attacking the bishop, so bishop has to move. And now with this bishop d6 move, we are also stopping this pawn from coming forward. And now in the further game, you can see like this, Anatoly Karpov played this b3 move just to neutralize this knight which is on his board and making some problems. He's not allowing this rook to develop, also not allowing this rook to develop. He's created some mess around it. But you can see how Gary Kasparov applied one more rule. After this trade, you can see he played his knight to d7, and now what he's trying to prepare is queen f6, controlling this square. And you can see after queen f6, this knight also cannot move there because we will just take it. And after some few moves, here Anatoly Karpov managed to play f3, but still you can see this, it is blocking his bishop, which is not doing anything. Now this rook is also not doing anything because he cannot move on e1 and f2 square. This rook being on the board is not doing anything, which is already dead. And this knight being on this d3 square is equal to points of a queen, which is very dangerous and very advantageous to us. And as I said, it increases the chances of tactics. And in the latter game, here Gary Kasparov won the match by a nice little tactics. Here Karpov took this bishop and Gary Kasparov sacrificed his rook. Rook c1. The point behind this move is, if you take this rook, we have queen takes c1. After rook blocks, we take the rook, and you look, this is a checkmate. So in the game, Anatoly Karpov defended the rook with knight b2 move. But you can see queen f2. Now we are threatening rook e1 check. So opponent defended it with knight d2. And now you can see after these trades, we have rook e1, and Anatoly Karpov resigned here because now there are no chances of survival. If bishop blocks, we can take with the rook, and after knight takes, it's still a checkmate. Tip number 4 is evaluating trades. Before every trade, you should ask yourself, what am I getting from this trade? If you are not getting any advantage from that trade, you should never trade. Basically, advantage means after that exchange or trade, you can get an open file, a comfortable position, or a relaxed position in which you can play freely. It will lead you to 3 main advantages. The first one is, whenever in a position where it is obvious to take for your opponent, but you are getting nothing from it, you will not take it or you will not trade it. So your opponent's expectations will get killed, and that will make him frustrated. Second one is, it will gain you a flexible position. And the third one is, you can play a strategic game. Generally, bishops are considered superior than the knight. But what if I ask you, in this position, will you trade this bishop for this knight? You ask yourself, what advantage will I get from it? And if you calculate it, you can see you will disturb the pawn structure. You are opening up this king. You are playing with the security and the safety of this white king. Now you can attack it very easily. So that's the advantage you are getting it. You can definitely trade here. Now there are various ways to continue from this position. You can play knight f4 to threaten checkmate here. You can just play knight d4, attack this queen, attack this pawn, and after this you can move your knight to h4 and threaten checkmate here. So there are very attacking chances, and suddenly you can see here evaluation bar is showing minus 2.17 for us, means a 2 pawn up like advantage here. But instead of trading here, if you have played another something move like rook e8, you just observe the evaluation bar. Now this position, it is showing nearly equal, means with just a wrong trade decision, you can see a winning position can be a drawn position. This is example number 2. I have seen many opponents which go for this knight g5 to threaten fork to this queen and the rook. But what black can do is just castle, and now you have no fork, but they still think it. After this take, he will gain a pawn. But no, you should not allow to gain this pawn. you can just take this knight because you are gaining 2 minor pieces for a rook and pawn. And one tip to tell you, 2 minor pieces can attack more on your opponent's half of the board. They control more squares and which gains in more attacking. So when your opponent is going to trade 2 minor pieces for a rook and a pawn, you should happily do it. And if you were one of them who were trading these 2 minor pieces for a rook and pawn, so stop doing this thing from today. And you can see here, with just trading 2 minor pieces for a rook and a pawn, here black is in advantage of 1.6. The third example comes from the famous Sicilian defense. Here white plays d4, and what is the advantage of this trade now? Here black can take it. So what black is doing is, he is exchanging this dumb c5 pawn with white's central d4 pawn, and in exchange of this white's central d4 pawn, he activates his knight with knight takes d4. Here you ask yourself, can black take this knight? If you see, after knight takes, this is a bad trade because he just helped white to develop his queen. And now you can see, black cannot develop his knight because we can just play e5 and most of the squares are taken away. If he goes on h5, then g4 traps the knight. There is no current piece which can develop. So you can see here, he is forced to play d6, and now we can just develop every piece freely. We can just castle and attack early than black. Tip number 5 is, offense is the best defense. Whenever your opponent attacks you or your king, you just ask yourself, can I counterattack my opponent instead of defending it? Generally, it has 4 main advantages. The first one is, it shifts psychological pressure. Means before attacking, if your opponent was thinking he was winning, and after the counterattack, it is you who is winning. So it completely shifts psychological pressure. It disturbs your opponent's piece coordination. It turns your weaknesses into strengths, and it leads to material or positional gains. So all these advantages you are going to see in the upcoming examples. This is example number 1. Here black played bishop h3 attacking this white rook. Rook moved on e1, thinking that after this pin, black is one who is totally losing and he is completely winning. But you can see, he is attacking and pinning our queen. But now instead of defending this queen, what you ask yourself is, can I counterattack instead of defending it? And when you ask yourself, you will get a nice little tactics, which is bishop takes f2 check. Now king takes f2 is forced because queen is covering this h1, bishop is covering this g2 and f1. So king is forced to take. Now we have rook f8 check. Now if the queen blocks, it is simple, we can just take the queen, and after the king is forced to go on g1, there is no other option, and now we sacrifice the rook. This is the beauty of the game. The king cannot take this rook because it is defended with our bishop. So rook is forced to take, and now you can see we are out of the pin of the king, and now queen g2 is a checkmate with support of this bishop. This is example number 2. Here white played e6 to open up this bishop's side so that he can fork the king and the rook. But instead of playing the moves like bishop d6, you ask yourself, instead of defending with the move bishop d6, can you counterattack? And after asking this question, you can come up with the plan of bishop c5. What it does, you allow your opponent to take this c7 pawn with a check and a fork, but now you sacrifice the queen because after bishop takes c7, bishop takes f2 is a checkmate. Suddenly, you shifted psychological pressure, it disturbed your opponent's pieces and coordination. It also turned your weakness into strength, which is this fork weakness, and also it lead to a positional gain. This is the final example. Here you can see these two pieces coordinate and plan attack on this weak f7 square so that this knight can fork this queen and the rook. So instead of the moves like knight h6 defending, you find a counter attack. Offense is the best defense. So this move has a drawback, d3. Now this bishop activates and he's threatening to take this knight, and after recapture, this white can still fork you like this. So instead of knight h6 defense, you get an offense. You play an offensive move, queen g5, attacking this knight, attacking this g2 pawn. So if knight takes, we have queen takes g2. If they save the rook, we have queen takes e4 check. They don't have to sacrifice their queen because we will just take it. So bishop blocks, and now knight f3 is a smothered mate. This bishop is pinned to the king, cannot take it. And here, instead of defending their rook, if they take your rook, then it's all easy. You just take, and after these some captures, you can see, you can give this knight f3 check, bishop can't take it, king has to move, knight takes d2 check. If you take with any of these pieces, like if bishop, knight and the queen, queen h1 is going to be checkmate. So the king has to move, and now we save the knight and enjoy the game.
Now it's the time for bonus tip, for which you have been waiting for these 20 minutes. Most players watch videos, nod their head, feel smart, but when they sit at the board to play chess, they forget everything and play the same way as before. This is why they stay stuck at the same level. So here's the tip of execution. The next time you play chess, force yourself to use these tips. Ask yourself, did I check for tips given by Chess Mosaic? In the beginning, it will feel slow. You might take extra time. That's good. That means you are breaking your old habit of rushing. Practice this in every game, online or on the board. Don't just learn, execute it. Learning changes nothing, execution changes everything. Follow this rule and you will see the real improvement, not just in your rating but in your confidence too.